Y'all, Wizard101 officially has a brand new villain, and yet, if you only interact with the main level 180 Darkmoor storyline, you actually get to know very, very little about her. So that's why today, I thought we would revisit one of the coolest parts of the final area in Wizard101, the Scholomance. The Scholomance is a source of shadow magic in Darkmoor. It released a curse that created a bunch of werewolves and vampires. And yet, presumably, the new Arc 5 villain Miranda has been living here for weeks. Not only is this really crazy that there's just like this minimalistic bedroom here where there's just a bunch of mad scientist notes strewn all over the place, but there's actually notes that you can read in her own words that tell us a lot about her motivations, her powers, what her plans are for the spiral. Most people don't read these because they're not involved in the main storyline, but I thought we would go through them because they're really, really cool. Let's start with the first one. Thoughts on Bartleby. She says, "When I got here, I found myself standing in front of a talking tree that could barely remember its own name," meaning when Miranda came, Bartleby wasn't even himself because he didn't have his Eye of History, the one that Malister stole. But here's where it gets interesting, right? Malister stole the Eye of History to help the Cabal. We learned about that actually way later in the plot, but we end up recovering the Eye of History during the Mirage storyline. Whatever Miranda was doing between when we got into the spiral and she followed us here, which is basically what we end up finding out, that she followed us here, whatever she ended up doing between that time and when we were in Mirage, not only was she able to, like, you know, navigate the spiral without Bartleby knowing anything, she somehow has also created some way of knowing that she's being watched by him. This part is already interesting because it kind of implies that she's either spying on Bartleby or the wizard without being noticed, and she's somehow aware that his Eye of History is back. That's already very weird, not really explained that much further. Some type of awareness that goes beyond other villains we've had. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting. In these notes on Bartleby, Miranda says that he knows what she's gonna do before even she does, but she also knows that he won't approve, and therefore she needs to blind him, which she ends up doing at the end of Darkmoor by imbuing herself with Sybil's seed. By doing that, she basically, I guess, absorbs the powers of the dreaming, which is the one thing, as we learned in Wallaroo, that Bartleby is not fully aware of. But from these notes alone, we actually find out a lot. She clearly has some reason that she's here that Bartleby, someone who looks over the spiral, won't approve of. Not only has she been aware of when she's being watched, she's actually successfully devised a strategy as well where she can no longer be watched by Bartleby, which is the first time this has ever happened with any villain, right? Malister, Morgant, Grandfather Spider. What all of those villains have in common is, at some point, Bartleby probably was able to see how things were going to go with this Eye of History. This is the first time it really feels like Bartleby cannot help us. Now, her thoughts on Bartleby, all it really says is that her plans are something that he won't approve of. And in my opinion, the real motive behind what she's doing is revealed on her notes on Earth. This is our first real look at how Earth operates in the spiral, which I think is just so cool. She says that Earth is a mess, maybe even in its death throes. So presumably the spiral is set somewhat in the future of Earth where, I don't know, the environment's burning apart, they're running out of energy, resources, all of that. I'm assuming that's what's happening. Now, here's the part that's very, very interesting. She says that Earth is a knot that she doesn't have a sword to, like, you know, basically fix, but she detected an energy wave that devised a means to follow it. Now, in my opinion, Miranda, everything that we know about her points to her being a scientist that somehow knows stuff about energy. I think the fact that she detected the energy suggests that she was working on some way to figure out Earth's solution to energy altogether. So she followed this strange energy wave that brought us from Earth to the spiral, and essentially, I think that speaks to what her research or whatever her initial plan was. It's something based on energy, and we know that Earth is probably running out of it or something similar. And she says something very interesting that I think a lot of people, I definitely missed this on my first read through, but she says the spiral is a mess of ley lines, and we don't know much about these ley lines. They're mentioned a few times outside of the main plot. They're mentioned in the Arcanum. It's what literally powers the Arcanum. The pilot is literally something that navigates the ley lines that flow through it. We also know about, before there was a spiral door in the Catacombs dungeon, that people use ley lines to travel, meaning they're a source of energy. And she also says this: in the spiral's darkest pockets, this mess of ley lines that she found, she also found a sword, which in my opinion means that she discovered something in its darkest pocket, which is Darkmoor. Now, what did she discover? you only need to read the next notes, and I think this one is the craziest one. So this is called Notes on Magical Transference. So she mentions there's a lot of stuff that does almost what she wants, still being very vague about what she wants, might I add. But she mentions the Ritual of Kradava, which is mentioned in a very, very recent weaving quest where Velma, or whatever her name is, in the night side, you know, she has her life magic stolen from her. She mentions pip management spells. I think she's talking about the spell Steal Pip. And I think this because of the fact that it's, you know, within the theme of stealing. She also mentions death school stuff. What all of these have in common is that they are involved in stealing things. I think that's very, very important. Considering this is about the Notes of Magical Transference and she's talking about stealing, I think she's really talking about stealing magic, not transferring it. But then she mentions that beyond all of this stealing magic, she found some nameless rites. Something in the Scholomance, this dark place based on shadow magic with no rules. Clearly she has found some way to steal magic, pulling curses out of people. She mentions, based on essentially using everyone in Darkmoor that's suffering from this curse like a glorified test subject, that she has found a way to basically transfer or steal magic, but she needs to do it at scale. Now, the at scale part, especially when you consider the fact that this is about stealing magic, I think that says a lot. Based on the notes on Earth and this alone, in my opinion, what this means is that she wants to find a way to re-energize Earth. She has gone through all of these different ways to steal magic, and she has clearly found something in the darkest place in the spiral, the Scholomance, to do it. And she has even been able to evade the Eye of Bartleby in the process of doing that. The final note is about this place, the Scholomance, a place of deep shadow magic. She talks about an academy of experimental magic, which we later know is a heretical academy, the final dungeon of Darkmoor. But it's not written down, but it clearly has some of this knowledge about stealing magic that she cares about so much, and she wants to absorb it. So she wants this knowledge, but she knows that the Scholomance is a trap, right? Anyone that actually accesses it becomes corrupted. That's essentially why we see a bunch of these witches in Darkmoor running around, and they become evil and shadowy and corrupted. They're not actually able to access the Scholomance. I think this is because of the will of the person that initially made it, Balor, the final enemy of Darkmoor. But here's the part that I think is the scariest bit of it all, right? This evil entity that's like in the heart of this source of shadow knowledge, she doesn't even notice how fearful or corrupt it is. This is something that has literally created so much angst in Darkmoor, and she basically organizes all of these people, the Broken Branch. These are the people that attack the Arcanum at her, you know, command. These are the people that are essentially rounding up vampires and werewolves to try to undo the curse on them. Right? She's manipulated these people, and they are doing what she's telling them to do because they think that she's on their side, but she doesn't even notice the fear or the corruption. She really doesn't care about any of this, clearly. I think this is such an important part of this entire thing because it really goes to show that she's playing some kind of crazy game that she doesn't even believe in herself, right? She goes through this entire shtick of how Darkmoor is bad because Bartleby wants it to be, but I think that she's just doing that to cloud the wizard's judgment. I think she's doing that to get the Broken Branch and all of these people to follow her. What these notes really reveal is that her purpose is much more selfish, and it's much more focused on Earth. What all of this really tells us is something very important, that Miranda is some sort of scientist that will stop at nothing, and for once we have a villain that Bartleby cannot even help us again. As far as what her grand plans are, I think it definitely relates to something energy related, where Earth will be saved. We know that Bartleby won't be approved, and that she's also been looking at the spiral's ley line. So I'm gonna call it. I think she's gonna use exactly what she learned about stealing magic in the Scholomance to steal all of the spiral's magic and route it over to Earth. What that means is that the next few worlds of this arc are all gonna be little stepping stones, and what I really think it's gonna lead to is us finally using the Bartleby spiral door to actually access Earth ourselves. I think this is leading into the final world of this arc being Earth, and I could be wrong. We're years away from this. But Darkmoor was only the start. It was just where she learned how to steal magic. We don't know what she needs to do it to begin with. I do think that the path that we're about to go down, though, is about to literally threaten all magic in the spiral. I think if Miranda is successful in what she wants, there will be no more magic in the spiral, and Earth will be the only winner in that scenario. And considering we've already had to choose between the Earth and the spiral as early as Darkmoor, I will be very, very surprised if that choice doesn't come up again. I think there's going to be some ambiguity to what we actually consider right or wrong in a way that we've never seen before. I think it would have been crazy if these notes existed and y'all didn't know about this. So hopefully y'all enjoyed this video on what Miranda's plans are. Now that she has absorbed Symbol's Seed and Bartleby can't tell, what is she actually going to do? I think these notes are our only real look at it. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on whether y'all think my theory is correct. Y'all think Earth is in an energy crisis and she's trying to steal the spiral's magic? Or do you guys think these notes mean something else? It could totally, it's open for interpretation. I think there's many, many ways to look at these. So I look forward to reading all of y'all's thoughts. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave us something new. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. I'll see y'all soon. And yeah.